But I think the development of full artificial intelligence will spell the end of the human race.
It's a flying object and we don't know what it is. I would hope somebody is checking it out.
I don't know whether rockets or whatever, but incredibly fast, opposite direction. It was too fast to be an airplane.
I'm glad the Pentagon is looking at this, because if it poses a threat, I want them on top of it.
Well, the craft generates its own gravitational field.
You said there's lights in the sky?
The internet has become the command center for criminals and terrorists.
911, what's your emergency? I need help, please help!
Aliens won't let it happen. You know, that's what we're instructed to say.
Roger, Area 51. Alien kept deep under the ground.
1, 0,
doesn't have your best interest in mind. The government is self-serving. You're here for a reason. You're listening to Troubled Minds Radio. Broadcasting live from a secret bunker just off the extraterrestrial highway. Somewhere in the desert sands outside of Las Vegas. From somewhere in space-time, loosely labeled Generation X on planet Earth. And asking questions of you in earnest into the digital darkness. Well, good evening and welcome to Troubled Minds Radio. I'm your host, Michael Strange. We're streaming on YouTube, Rumble, X, Twitch, and Kick. We are broadcasting live on the Troubled Minds Radio Network. That's KUAP Digital Broadcasting. And, of course, 88.4 FM, Auckland, New Zealand. Tonight, we get weird. But what night don't we get weird? The last show was about the goblins, right? The goblins, and it's doing numbers on YouTube. I kind of don't watch numbers for the show, really. I just fire and forget. Shout out our old buddy Rohan. Rest in peace, my friend. But he always used to say fire and forget. You know, you kind of put it out there. It's sort of like the Johnny Appleseed of ideas. You just put it out there and then just keep on creating things and doing what you do, right? Well, it turns out the one from last time, the Chat GPT and the goblins is doing numbers. It's like it can't even keep up with the count now. I mean, you know, it's crazy. Like for live streams, it's really difficult to kind of crack through the algorithm, and for some reason, this one is doing it. But anyway, it got me thinking, not just of that and the idea of ideas do sort of persist and are able to crack through the noise, the static and the noise and the signal to noise ratio, but also the other part of it that we were talking about, that idea of the codex, right? And the codex in particular was a Chat GPT thing that was written as a coding agent. Okay, it was written specifically to code. All right. But it got me thinking in the larger context of what we missed. So this is kind of the second version of that. We're not going to talk Chat GPT tonight or AI or any of the rest, but the idea of the codex has kind of been stuck in my mind ever since. Shout out Derek the Night Stalker. He brought it up and was talking about it. And I thought, well, that's an interesting transition. So let's flip this on its head and do it the other way. I'm calling this tonight the Grimoire tradition. What opens when you read it? Now, for a lot of reasons, like I said, I'll start here as usual with there's no truth to be found here. This is ideas. This is looking at the past, the present, and the future in different ways and trying to consider what we've missed. Okay. And that idea of the codex in particular stuck in my mind as this tradition, this old Grimoire tradition of reading these books, right? And think of it this way. In the Never-Ending Story, it was sort of an interactive aspect of Sebastian and Atreyu and, you know, kind of the blurring of lines, and this never-ending story continues because you are part of the story. The story is also yours. It's not just what you read in the book. It's also sort of encroaching in your own life, in your own mind, in your own it just becomes part of you, right? It influences you. It maybe hopefully inspires you to write other books or other things or whatever, right? Just to create things, and it stays with you forever. Now, in the same tradition, the Grimoire tradition, it's very similar, except in this case, when you open a grimoire and read of it, to these old, you know, how would you describe them? These old broken tomes of forbidden knowledge that goes back hundreds or even thousands of years. Once you read them, you're never the same again. Okay. Even so much that the church has, you know, the medieval church spent a ton of time trying to track these things down and get them burned, and et cetera, so on. Right. Anyway, we're going to get to some of that and the wild part of it, but the codex is stuck heavily in my mind. And as usual, check out the write-up. The write-up is very good tonight. You can find that at troubledminds.org. Click on the Substack newsletter, Substack newsletter right there on top, and it'll take you straight over to the thing, and it's the latest one. So I'm going to read from this because it's probably better than me just rambling on and on. But there's an interesting aspect to this that I'm going to make the case tonight that the Grimoire tradition is an ancient technology, okay? And it's not necessarily about the spells themselves or whatever forbidden knowledge of demonology or, you know, this type of stuff. We don't have to talk about that or even get into that. I think there's a larger aspect to this that really has been left by the wayside. And let's do it. Let's just talk about it direct, and I'll read the thing. And we are taking your calls tonight if you want to be part of the conversation. The number to call, of course, is 702 857-6939. You can click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. We'll put you on the show. But here we go. Straight from the blurb. And the blurb is the best way to kind of catch up and find out what the hell I'm talking about. But there's a category of object the ancient world took more seriously than we do. Not weapons, not relics, not even temples, but books. Specific books. Texts that were copied in secret, hidden in walls, smuggled across borders, and burned by authorities with the same urgency reserved for plague carriers. The fear wasn't irrational. It was superstition. It was based on a consistent and documented observation. Certain texts, once genuinely engaged, do not leave the reader unchanged. Not metaphorically, not inspirationally, something more specific than that. Something harder to explain. And that's what we're going to get into tonight. Kind of the idea that once you read of a particular idea, a book, a whatever this is, it changes you. So you're not the one really learning something. You are engaging with an old technology that changes who you are fundamentally. Okay. And it goes all the way back to a ton of ideas, including, of course, the dangerous ideas. And to me, there's, a few things more dangerous than like eugenics. There's a few things more dangerous than my way or the highway, this type of stuff, like, two actual answers to every problem that we try and bottleneck into the political conversation space. Like a lot of these ideas are incredibly dangerous. The Communist Manifesto. I know, sorry, some of you are going to get really mad, but there's some really dark stuff in these ancient, maybe not so ancient on that one, but in some of these actual books, there's really dangerous ideas. Okay. But incredibly, these dangerous ideas, some of them are allowed at Mein Kampf, for instance. Some of them are just allowed and even published and, whatever. But then there's other books, which is the strange part, that have been heavily censored throughout time. I mean, recently we've even seen, what was it? Lord of the Rings is a subversive idea manufacturing book of dissent. I mean, I don't know. Like, this is the type of stuff that makes you wonder what the hell's really going on, and what, I don't know, let's say the power brokers that be know about this idea of us being changed by the book once you interact with it forever. So look, I don't know. We're starting there. I'm going to make that case because it is specific and it is difficult to explain, but love to hear your ideas on this. Why do you think ideas are so heavily censored, number one? Two, do you think there are ideas that will keep us, I don't know, change us so fundamentally that we become more dangerous to society? Because, of course, I think therein lies the answer, but what really do I know? I'm just one guy on the internet with a microphone, and that's that. Anyway, be right back. More Troubled Minds coming up in just one moment. We're going to get a word from our sponsor. In this case, it will be, let's see, whichever button I find here. Why is my thing freaking out? Oh, no. Please work. Be right back. More Troubled Minds in exactly 1 minute. Do not go anywhere. Catch you on the other side of this quick little break. Where is it? Oh, no. Oh, no. Feeling stressed? Overwhelmed? In today's fast-paced world, it's easy to get swept away by our emotions. Take a breath and find your inner strength with the Stoic Minute.
You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength.
The ancient Stoic philosophers understood that we can't control everything in life, but we can control how we react.
The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts.
Focus on what you can influence. Cultivate a positive mindset and let go of what you can't change. Find your inner strength. Live each day with courage, wisdom, justice, and moderation. Embrace the Stoic virtues and find peace within. The Stoic Minute, brought to you by Jack in Oregon. Welcome back to Troubled Minds. I'm Michael Strange. Let us continue, shall we? Okay, now, the Grimoire tradition spans roughly 6 centuries, or older, of course, going deeper back into the ancient ways, but of Western esotericism, drawing on sources far older, as I described, Babylonian, Egyptian, Hermetic, Kabbalistic. We've talked about all this stuff in the past. Its practitioners were not, as popular imagination has it, credulous peasants muttering over candles. They were physicians, astronomers, theologians, court advisors, and scholars who moved through the highest intellectual circles of their time. Cornelius Agrippa lectured at universities. John Dee advised Elizabeth I. Pietro di Urbano was one of the most influential physicians in medieval Europe. These were not people prone to delusion, and they reported consistently the same thing. The texts worked on them, not always in the ways they expected, not always in the ways they wanted, but the engagement was never neutral. And so that becomes the technology aspect of this. When you have a book of ideas that are so, I don't know, maybe ahead of their time, maybe even, let's say, time has passed them on, and their time was 1,000 years ago, and we're still reading these things today sort of outside of their time space when they were most relevant, when they were most, how would you describe it? Not relevant, when they were most, I guess we'll leave it at relevant because I can't think of a better way to put it. But out of the particular time space of where they came from, I do wonder if these old ideas do become dangerous outside of the spaces they were allowed, or the spaces they were built for and built in. It's kind of like, when you, I can't think of a good example. Stop rambling, Mike. Okay, so we are taking your calls tonight. So what do you know about this? Now, the Codex is where we started from the last show, the gremlins, the goblins, and the rest. But the idea of the Codex is this Grimoire tradition, and it goes back a very long time. And it's been heavily censored forever into the space of book burning, of copying these tomes in secret and in darkness and hiding them in walls and smuggling them across borders and all kinds of wild things that kind of go into the annals of history here. But one of these stood out to me, and we'll get into this, but there's one called the Sworn Book of Honorius. Okay, I'm probably saying that not appropriately, but it's a medieval grimoire purportedly written by Honorius of Thebes. Yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. So the date of composition is uncertain, but is possibly mentioned as the Liber Caesar in the 13th century, yada, yada. I'll tell you the story about this. Now, it's wild because it is one of those things that was heavily hunted by the church, by the medieval church. And I want to make sure we get this straight, that I'm not saying that the medieval church is the same as the modern day church, because we're talking Catholicism here, right? It's not the same thing at all. It was very different. It's changed a lot. Reforms, all the rest. Okay. Nothing's perfect. I just want to make sure that you understand what I'm talking about here. I'm not making the case that this or that is bad or this or that is good. I'm looking at history and kind of wondering what the hell's up with it. So we'll get back to this, the Sworn Book of Honorius. And I'll tell you, it's a wild tale. And as I was digging into the idea of these grimoires, this is the one that stood out to me the most and made me go, wait a minute now. Here are some ancient ideas that there was a council of ancient wizards that got together and decided they needed to copy this and smuggle it away before it got burned and left to dust, the dust of history itself. Anyway, what do you know about this? And is it possible to read a book or an idea that changes you so fundamentally it becomes dangerous? That's where we start. We'll get to the idea of this Sworn Book of Honorius and some other things, because that's what we do on Troubled Minds. Again, calling it the Grimoire tradition, what opens when you read it, and of course, as the addendum, what stays with you. Yeah. Love to hear your thoughts. 702-857-6939. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. We'll put you on the show. It's as easy as that. Let's go to James. James in Michigan. What's up, brother? You're on Troubled Minds. How are you tonight? And go right ahead.
Yeah, glad to be here. Hopefully you can hear me all right.
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Good. This is an amazing topic. I didn't get to listen to the write-up or read the write-up. But books and just ideas and writing in general have always fascinated me. I listened recently to a whole series of lectures on the history of banned books just in the U.S. and the U.K. over the last couple hundred years or so. And it was, I'm not going to go into examples in specific, but just the way that there were some of the books they were talking about in there, some where I can understand right away why they were sort of, people had problems with certain books, but then there were others that were like kids' books even. And I just, when they shared the title of the book, I remember thinking, what's wrong with that book? I remember that book when I was a kid. And then they go over, details, and I'd be like, oh, okay, I guess I can kind of see why. Wow, I never thought of it, things that way. so it's just fascinating to me, and I can scale this up now to this larger topic. The idea is sort of reminds me of what you're talking about here, possibly as well, and even just the idea of whether or not people believe in sort of these grimoires when they're writing them. I've even heard that some were written as if they were real, but the people that made them either didn't exist and it was sort of a hoax made by someone else. Those kinds of things, whether or not, regardless of the source of these materials, I guess what I'm trying to say here, people still believed in them and used them for their own practices and their own, supposedly magical ceremonial, magical practices and things. And again, I'm not saying magic is or isn't real, but, these things are still used by people, even though in some cases, according to, depending on who you talk to, they were not even real. There's nothing even to them. But it goes to this idea of these ideas and this focus from people on the outcomes of what they were trying to get from these things. And supposedly things happen still. So that's all. This is just really fascinating. It's probably going off of the topic of what you're talking about here, but it's still fascinating, all these connections to everything as well.
Nope, you're spot on. That's exactly what we're talking about. And not just necessarily the spells inside of these books or, some of this ancient wisdom in that regard. And we can add as a wrinkle as part of this discussion too. Do you believe in ritual magic in any capacity? Do you think that there was something to these ideas then that maybe has, I don't know, maybe because of the power of belief has faded, or maybe the magic has changed, the quote magic has changed. I don't know. I do know that the human mind space is very malleable, and we can change a lot based on what we do believe. It's why I talk about belief so often on this show, because I think it's incredibly important to confront our own beliefs with ourselves, inside of ourselves, without, at least without, it's called like a direct interdiction, right? You don't actually have to have somebody say, hey, come on, slow down, let's believe something else. It's good to have conversations about belief sort of in the tertiary space of belief, but then also be able to kind of question your own belief. I think we should do this all the time, because anything so rigid that you would die for it or kill for it really becomes, in my mind, the dangerous belief itself. Okay, so we'll put that aside for now, but I don't know. What do you know about this? How weird does it get? We'll get to the story of the Sworn Book of Honorius, which is incredible, by the way. I'll tell that right now, unless James has anything else, and then we'll get to Hang Tight Joe. We'll go to you at the bottom of the hour. I want to make sure we fill in some of the blanks. But you're spot on, James, with what you're talking about. What else you got? Go right ahead.
Yeah, not too much, really. Just that it's amazing how a book or material can be sort of harmless or benign to one person or one group of people, and then terrible to another, depending on, again, sort of what people think and how they think, and that can lead to books being again hidden or burned, or all these situations, and then just everything seems to depend on where you're coming from, whether or not that should be done in so many cases. And it's something that's been happening, like you've been saying, throughout time, probably from the very beginning of any kind of recorded anything to now.
Yeah, amen. Well said. Hang tight. We'll get back to you. You know him, you love him. That's James Salcido, of course, the paranormal expert of Troubled Minds, the glue in the show. Follow him, salcidoparanormal.com, SALSIDO, paranormal.com. Let me tell you about this book. Now, this book is wild. Okay. Like I said, I was like, okay, I want to do a book about grimoires today, or a show about grimoires. Let me find like the sweetest one ever. And this is kind of the sweetest one ever. Listen to this. So according to its prologue, the Council of 89 master magicians from centers like Naples, Athens, and Toledo selected Honorius to preserve the core of sacred magic. With the help of the angel Horohel, or Horohel, Horohel, he condensed 7 volumes of Solomonic and other magical teachings into 93 chapters. Okay, now think about this. A council of 89 master magicians came together to try and save this ancient knowledge, because it was being collected and burned and, the rest of that stuff. That was a really horrific time in medieval Europe. But beyond that, like I said, it's, well, let me just read it. So, okay, so The prologue frames the work as a desperate effort to safeguard true divine magic against intense persecution by the church, widely understood as a reference to the campaigns of Pope John the 22nd, that's 1316 to 1334, who issued bulls against magic and necromancy. Okay, right? Okay, I get that. But the text was already known as Liber Sacer or Liber Sacratus, the sacred book, by the 13th century. So the core material likely dates to the late 13th or 14th century. But why the sworn book? Okay. And again, think of it. Meeting by dark of night in some secret enclave, 89 master magicians get together and try and put together the ultimate book, the ultimate banned book, and smuggle it across borders, hide it under floorboards, bury it in the desert, whatever, to try and keep this thing and the ideas within it alive. Now, like I said, you can look at this from a religious aspect and go, well, clearly, Mike, they were doing the devil's work. Okay, like I get that part of it, maybe, but then is hunting down the enemy and butchering them not the devil's work? Again, I know it's an ambiguous space, and so I'm not going to press that too hard, but you get the idea. What were they trying to preserve? And is it possible that when you read a book like this, when you read something, this ancient grimoire space, which I'm calling, of course, the whole show tonight is named the Grimoire tradition. When you read something like this, is it possible that unlike the never-ending story that you're part of, it changes you at your core in some capacity, right? Like that ancient wisdom becomes sort of a technology, becomes an idea factory that once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And that's what's on my mind tonight. How weird does this get? And why are ideas so fundamentally dangerous? They need to be hunted down, butchered, persecuted, burned, and never revisited again. Like I said, we've seen some modern time stuff in the past 100 years that's horrific. Some of the books that I mentioned earlier are just at the core of just millions of dead people. And they still publish those books. So isn't it strange that something like this has been chased out of history, and who knows what was really there in the very beginning when they put these ideas together in one single book? I don't know. Seem dangerous? Seem not? Seem somewhere in between? I don't know. You tell me. Love to hear your thoughts. 702-857-6939. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. But I'm looking at this as a technology, not the spells per se within it. Not the, how to contact angels or whatever. I'm looking further, deeper, into the aspect that maybe the book itself is the technology that changes your mind space forever and ever on. One more time, 702-857-6939. What do you know about this? How weird does it get? And Codex, Part 2. Be right back. More Troubled Minds on the way. Do not go anywhere. We got Joe in Florida coming up. More from James and your calls as well. Be right back.
You're tuning into Troubled Minds, the show where mystery knows no bounds. Stay tuned for revelations that'll keep you questioning the fabric of reality.
comes to you, you are not the one who opened the book. Swear it before the angels face. Copy it and find it a hiding place. 3 souls only, no more than 3. Carry what they're trying to make us forget. Something reads you back while you read. Something plants a seed you didn't choose. The world gets louder, the border gets thin. You can close the cover, but it doesn't close within.
Hello, friends. Hope everybody's well tonight. What's up, Matt, Sal, Eric? We got Joe in Florida. Moth, how you doing? I saw the stuff you're dropping. Appreciate that. Please don't get me killed, dude. Satya, Lungy Mule, APOC. What's up, Daryl, Joey, and the Robert, James, of course. You guys are the best. I'm just saying that because, you know, there's some, that information is difficult in the moment. So be careful. Just be careful, okay? I'm not saying you shouldn't share that. I'm saying it's good information, but supposedly people have been off for sharing that information, just to let you know, just as a reminder. What's up, Ricky and fam? Hello is not available. Theo over on Rumble. Merlin Magi. What's up, Sweets? I see you guys. Hope you're well tonight. The real Jason Barker. Theo. Good evening, guys. Carl and Nostradamus. Hello. If I missed anybody, just let me know. I'll circle back and say hi. I'm trying to keep up with all the things. Here we go. Troubled Minds happening right about now. Welcome back to Troubled Minds. I'm your host, Michael Strange. We're streaming on YouTube, Rumble, X, Twitch, and Kick. We are broadcasting live on the Troubled Minds Radio Network. That's KUAP Digital Broadcasting. And, of course, 88.4 FM, Auckland, New Zealand. Tonight, some books don't leave you the same. Not because of what they say, because of what engaging with them does to you. The Grimoire tradition has documented this for over 600 years. The preparation that rewires you before the work begins. The perceptual shift that doesn't reverse. And the world that somehow, some way tends to get louder. Now, like I said, looking at this as a technology in the mind space of the ancient Grimoire. And not only, like I said, not necessarily the spells or any of that stuff. I mean, it's super interesting to me. You know, the dungeon master in me goes, cool, what's in the spell book? But the sort of materialist in me also goes, wait a minute, though. If this was actually at some level of technology in the mind space, the entirety of the book itself, this old Grimoire, or many of them, that changes people so fundamentally that it's dangerous, not to the person necessarily, maybe yes, but also to the institutions that are trying to suppress these memories or these ideas. I don't know. Like I said, it makes me wonder about who really the monsters are. And are ideas really dangerous? I think the answer is probably obvious, but it depends on the idea. And, well, let's talk about it. Love to hear your thoughts. I'm calling this the Grimoire tradition. What opens when you read it? 702-857-6939. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. Anything to add, James? And we'll go to Joe in Florida.
Yeah, I think the main reason I'm thinking of the spells and all that is not so much because of using them or any of that. It's just the idea that those ideas are dangerous to certain institutions, certain groups of people, whether they're real or not. Just the idea that they even exist is sort of dangerous, depending on who you talk to. So, and it seems to go with a lot of things, sort of anomalous throughout time as well. The idea that there's anything other than, you know, what this group or that group says there is, has always been around. So, yeah, I think that's probably where my mind was going with just thinking about all that. And yeah, I don't know. It's just with these things, these ideas, because all you have to do is see it once, and you're always going to be thinking about these things on some level. And even if you don't remember all the details, it's still there I would guess, to some degree in your mind until you pass away.
Yeah, well said. And like I said, no, it wasn't really rhetorical. I think it's obvious that some ideas are fundamentally dangerous, like, eugenics, like I said, that type of stuff. It's quite obvious, but it's funny that, not funny, it's sad funny, grotesque funny, that there was a time where it was in vogue and many academics were sort of on board with it. Not to go after academics. Sorry about that. But you know what I mean? Like it was a cultural movement, and it was a dark time too. So not just the past 100 years, but beyond that. And you know what's even funny? I'll tell the story later, but it's just strange to me that these ideas, some of them are allowed still. And I don't know, like censorship is a weird thing, and don't get me started because I'm turning into a monster myself trying to explain this. Anyway, love to hear your thoughts on this. 702-857-6939. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. We'll put you on the show. Sorry about that, Eric. Let's go to Joe in Florida. What's up, brother? You're on Troubled Minds with Mike and James. How are you, sir? And go right ahead.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
I'll try to make it quick. I'm listening in, but I've got a project I got to get done. But interesting, when you were talking about this, I thought about Thomas Paine and common sense for ideas. I've said this before, but I know that if I watch a movie as opposed to reading the book, but a lot of times if I read the book on something, I will tend to dream about the book. So just from reading a book, I already know that it makes more of an impression, probably on my subconscious because I'm dreaming about it, than watching a movie. There are a few instances, maybe I could say watching Close Encounters of the Third Kind when I was a kid, kind of verified already weird things that I remembered from being a kid. But to maybe try to put myself in perspective back then when these grimoires were written, if I was a doctor or a Da Vinci or somebody experimenting with stuff already, and I needed to focus, and maybe the Bible wasn't there to focus because maybe these spell books were there, that might help me. Even just a chant or an incantation, it might help guide my hands. So when you say that it's a tool, definitely. However you want to make that definition of what a tool is or what does it do. So if I read something and it puts me in a trance or it just makes me calmer to be a better doctor or have a better idea, then it's an effective tool. Not to mention when we always talk about spelling or putting a spell or a spelling, there's something to that. The word is power. The focus is power. And then you said earlier in the show about magic and how that gets worshipped or changed. And I always talk about American gods and how belief systems have changed. Now, maybe those books that were being hoarded or taken away by the church were dangerous because they were falling into a population at large that was uneducated, right? And the church was maybe fearful of that because they've always wanted to maintain power in belief. Belief should have been focused on the Holy Bible, whatever Testament, the whole thing, and to consolidate power. It sounds more practical. That's why they were taking those books. However, as a maybe, they kept those spells for whatever reason that might have been. Right? Like some of us might want to be atheists, but then we're kind of like, well, maybe there is something. So are we true atheists? Are we Camus, where we're just rolling up the rock and Sisyphus, but there's maybe something, but we got to enjoy our time here, right? In modern times, I look at Thomas Paine and Common Sense as being something that everybody could have read when the country was starting to become founded or looking for that movement of independence. If that was a thing, I would say that that book alone, or for the Bible or anything else, was probably what united the colonies and got us fighting England. And then you move into modern times, and we could debate this, and maybe I'll piss people off in that. But you could look at the prosperity gospel, and you could look at readings that have been corrupted in modern times. And when you look at the church, when you're making this comparison of the church back then, consolidating these things, and when you look at the church now, the church still has a central power, but we also have these other Christian or born-again Christian or extremist Christians or Christian Zionisms, dare I say, that have different definitions. And those churches that are individual don't answer to anybody. And that has become dangerous. If I had to look at this in modern times, that has become dangerous to the wall of separation of church and state.
Yeah, well said, all that. And it is, like I say, it is strange when, like you take like a fringe offshoot of Catholicism or, the greater Christianity aspect. I mean, there's a lot of really weird stuff going on out there, and it's not just based on that; it's based in everything. And so it's strange that you can cite something that's really, really off the wall and weird, and not even sort of based in the doctrine of where the actual historical doctrine of where this stuff came from. It's different. It's weird. It's so bizarre that you bring it up and then you still feel like you got to backtrack and be like, I'm not trying to say that, just because it's sort of loosely linked, but it's not the same thing at all. It's a weird cult is what it is. And there's thousands and thousands and thousands of them. It's just so strange that just because it's loosely tied, it's almost like it's a shield, right? As anyway, just wanting to point that out because you're spot on about a ton of that stuff. But yeah, go right ahead.
But then but a cult. But let's look at it. Let's look at Aleister Crowley and sex magic and all of those things, right? And I read the write-up. It was very good because it encouraged you to fast and look at the requirements before you even read the writing, right? The requirements for the human body, physical, made sense. I mean, you're challenging yourself and you're reaching into yourself, like Buddha might say. And in fact, what kind of interests me is, yes, this is all great, but I wish we knew a little bit more about Eastern religions or Eastern spells. Was there such a thing in the Eastern side? All I really know is like Sun Tzu and the Art of War, and that seems to have dealt more in logic and tacticians and things, but I could be way off because I don't know much about Eastern religion. We've always been on Western religion and the offshoots of magic and things that we've seen in our history books from the Salem witch trials or anything like that. But you look at Aleister Crowley, you look at Scientology and Xenu and their priests and their cults, and it is. And even then, Catholicism or Christianity was a cult before the Roman Church finally threw their hands up and said, you know what, let's just face this, and that's it. But then again, consolidate power. But does reading books, certainly over movies or anything else like that. And we can watch movies and none of us get out of a movie and start a revolution, but books can start revolutions. That's without argument. Books can start revolutions because that power is like an it's like a mind worm that gets in there and it becomes belief. And in the right leaders that are charismatic, it could be very dangerous. So I will leave you with that. There are other people around that want to call in. But it's a good topic and one that is relevant today because we don't read. We have 30-second clips. Knowledge is banned, depending. And the fact that any of us would unite over any one goddamn thing is never going to happen. Even people on an island that have done heinous things will never even unite for that. So that, beyond that. So.
Fantastic, Cole. Appreciate you staying up late with us. Godspeed on the project you're working on, and we'll talk to you soon. You have a great night, brother.
Good night.
Joe in Florida. I'm loving him, good friend for a long time. And again, shout out Kelly, the first guy to call and call back. Then Joe was the second. And we've been doing it ever since. Appreciate that very much. And look, a lot of things in there I hadn't considered either. And that's why we talk about these ideas. I bring the idea, sort of a loose framework of ideas, and then let's talk about it. What have I missed? What don't I know? And let's fill in some gaps. It's very important as part of these discussions to not just educate each other, but also sort of point out blind spots in what we're talking about. So me, look, I'm kind of a halfway antagonist because I bring a half-baked idea and let's fill in the gaps, right? That's the goal here. It's not really to paint a narrative per se. It's more like let's in a loose framework, tell a story together, and then also point out maybe some of the things that fit or don't fit, and let's just talk about it. You were the best. Appreciate the call. Anything to add to that, James? And we'll go to Jen in Missouri.
Nope, I think I'm good for now, but great call as well.
You're the best. 702-857-6939. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. We'll put you on the show. It's as easy as that. Speaking of Jen in Missouri, let's go to Jen in Missouri, the Arcane Observer. What is going on? You are on Troubled Minds. Just click the thing and unmute, and you are on the show. How are you tonight? Go right ahead.
Good, doing good. How are you?
Pretty good. Thank you for asking.
Good. Yeah, I think that if you consider, look at the Catholic religion, and we'll just look at that first. The origins of it, how long it was hanging around in so many different groups of people and societies that were completely illiterate. The book was not available to them for the most part. The book of the Bible. Even the priests themselves, I've mentioned this before, some of them had never even read the Bible. In early Christianity, early Catholicism, when it was spreading throughout Europe and around the world. And it wasn't until like the late 1400s, thereabouts. And at that point, I think it had been like over 1,000 years or near it, where Christianity and Catholicism had been existing up until that point without any book that the people were aware of. It was just oral conversations about it. When they would have Mass, it was literally just the ritual of taking Mass. So you would go in there and they would kind of just do that, from what I understand, and anyone can look this up. But that went on for the better half of that entire period of time. And the Grimoire itself is it comes from the French word grammar, I think is how you would say it. I mean, I'm not going to say it appropriately, but it's anything written in Latin, essentially, because Latin was the language of people who is scholars and people of knowledge. And so anything written in that, not available to the common people, was considered fairly mysterious and magical, occult knowledge. And that book came out and they began distributing it, and people would learn to read it and things like that. Just on a side note, and I know you're talking about this other text, this other grimoire, but all of these are just books that are written originally in Latin, most likely. And so these were books meant for a particular group of people to read. And that includes actually the Bible as it sits now. I don't abide by the idea that because of that, there was something particularly special at that point about the Bible, but it in and of itself transformed the world and had a tremendous impact on the mind, more so than any grimoire you will find on a shelf in a bookstore or anywhere else. The impact on the human psyche has been so tremendous and dramatic, especially in the Western world, that if ideas are dangerous, this idea that is portrayed in the Bible and the book, it has had such a tremendous impact and effect to have changed society and humanity as a whole, because from it and from all of those texts, you have all of the Abrahamic religions that have impacted everything in the world as we know it and have killed. I mean, like this is because of that book. There have been so many people, incalculable numbers, through the Crusades, and there's been nothing, and all the other whatever kind of wars you want to pick up, whatever one you want to talk about. have had to do with it and still do. So, I mean, if there was ever a grimoire more powerful, a grimoire, Vulgate Latin, that is the one. And it's profound that we don't really consider it that now. And at the same time, once they got that book, it splintered off. Everyone could just make up, their interpretation of what it meant. At that point, you have out of Protestantism, all the, Lutheranism, but on from that, you have the Calvinists. This is why, it was the Calvinists primarily during the era in America with burning people at the stake. And I'm not being critical of Christianity, because I can tell you that Christianity existed, and anyone can look this is just history of Christianity. It existed for over 1,000 years without that book at all, which is really incredible. And like I said, priests hadn't even read that book whenever they were spreading the word of it. And not the word of the book, but the word of the message, which may or may not have anything to do with that book, but a very potent book. And there is much magic done by use of psalms in hoodoo and voodoo. And many other, there's the 5 books. You have Moses, and the 7th book of Moses is a high occult book. The OTO uses the books of Moses and the Solomon texts. If you look up Viking and Nordic magic, the same symbols are shown in the books of Solomon. So these are identical in every way. And those are actually from print. You can look at that. As far as the grimoires are concerned with it. So this information, I actually had really terrible allergies. Almost couldn't do the show with James the other night because of it. But so excuse me that, my allergies are so rough. But the Bible is a grimoire. It is Latin Vulgate. Initially, when I was initiated for the people to read, and most people could not read that. It had to be translated into other languages. And then, so I think that's really an important point. And as far as we can think of little books of people's private journals of magic and the effects that could have on them to change their life, but nothing has changed humanity, unlike anything ever, in that book that I'm referring to. So I think that's something to consider.
Yeah.
What would have happened if they had never got that,
Yeah, true. Well said. Real quick, I just want to point out that I've never heard of it framed that way, that the Bible as a grimoire. But you're right; it is probably the most influential grimoire ever. And I don't know, it's weird. Like I said, when you say those words, suddenly you're a heretic or whatever to burn you at the stake. You and me both for even considering the idea. But I think you're absolutely right, and it is. Like you're describing too, it was written for a particular priest class, and everybody else illiterate. We talked about that earlier with Joe, but you're spot on, and a great way of looking at this, because I think, per usual, there's so many elements in play here, and you're definitely onto something. I love it. What else you got? Go ahead.
I mean, the priests were there whenever they would come into these societies in Europe and Western Europe, in these towns and villages that already had a faith system in place. They already had a belief system in place. So we don't need to say that they misplaced it, because it's true that it would have possibly, grown or changed on its own. And with Christianity, the introduction of it, it just basically was an overlay over their old beliefs. With Catholicism and Christianity, when it first began, it was more like what you would refer to now as folk Catholicism, which you see in South America and you see all over old Europe. You would see in old European magic, it would look like that. You'd also see it in hoodoo, voodoo, many of the magical practices, because they just overlaid it onto what they already believed. And the church allowed that initially for the longest time. This is not, making it up. This is actually just how it was, because they had to convert these people that they had conquered to this belief system. And what they were trying to do was create a belief system that they could unify these regions they were dominating under a particular belief system to unify their front. And it was this base. I mean, that's what they were doing. And then when you have the influence of Rome, and I'm not a historian, this is just stuff that I've read, but it's hard to argue with. It's what they did. And then the people themselves, once they were conquered like this, they did bring in, monasteries and things like that for education purposes. But there were people, whoever was, left in these regions, that as children would go into those monasteries, learn to read and write, some of them, but they would be there to enforce these belief systems. They had, different codexes of laws that if you would not be baptized, that the price was death. I mean, that's no joke. You can just look that up. And then the whole Western world is underneath Christianity. At that point, at least that's the church over against it. And then you have Protestantism pretending to come up against that when it's just something that was created from that book. They could say that this was because of this book. This is what we should believe. And so that's what they enforced across the entire region. And it's just wild to imagine because it created so much strife. And then along with that, you have Islam, which they would not even, if you did not have that book referring to these other, this belief system entirely, the Abrahamic belief system, they would not know about it. So it would not have an impact. But nothing has had, I will argue that nothing has had a stronger impact. And it's overlooked because maybe it is magical, but it changed. If you've ever seen a person that has been changed by it, they get radically changed by it.
Born again.
For good or for bad.
The term born again comes to mind.
You can, and they will turn, like I'm just going to talk about the negatives of it. They will literally turn on people because because of that book. It's crazy. I don't know. And I don't mean to speak badly against it because it's saved a lot of people from a lot of bad places, but that's also signing that it's a powerful text. I mean, it's literally the book. It's like what it is.
The Grimoire. As you know, we're out of time. If you got more, you're welcome to stay over after the break.
Thank you so much, and have a good one.
Appreciate the call. Yeah, and look, very well said. Please go give her a follow. That's Jen in Missouri, the Arcane Observer, troubledminds.org/friends. Scroll down, says follow Jen here. Please do that. Look, she is pointing out the obvious of what I've missed, talking about these ideas. What do you know about this? I'm calling this a Grimoire tradition. What opens when you read it? I think it's very clear sometimes. Sometimes it's not. 702-857-6939. Be right back. More Troubled Minds on the way. We got more from James. We got a couple calls on the line. And your calls as well. Do not go anywhere.
This is Troubled Minds. Your host, Michael Strange, the master of the mysterious, is here to guide you through the shadows of the unexplained.
Let's check the news. Australian researchers have unveiled what they're calling the world's first proof-of-concept quantum battery, a device that charges through a phenomenon known as superabsorption, where energy is taken in through a single, massive quantum event rather than a gradual chemical process. What makes the findings particularly striking is the counterintuitive discovery that these batteries charge faster as they grow larger, the opposite of conventional battery behavior. The work was led by Australia's National Science Agency in partnership with the University of Melbourne and a major Melbourne technology university, with results published in the journal Nature Light, Science and Applications. Researchers say the prototype validates a pathway toward room temperature, rapid-scale energy storage that could fundamentally change how we power future technologies. Turning to artificial intelligence and the business world, the promise of AI coding tools slashing costs for companies is running into a complicated financial reality. Anthropic quietly doubled its estimated usage costs for its AI coding tool, with the average developer now projected to spend between $150 and $250 per month, a figure that, multiplied across thousands of employees running multiple AI agents simultaneously, is pushing some organizations into expenses that rival human salaries. Meanwhile, a growing body of research continues to challenge the productivity gains narrative, including an MIT study finding that the vast majority of companies saw zero revenue growth after adopting AI. And finally, in a finding that adds a new dimension to space medicine research, scientists at a leading Los Angeles medical center have discovered that miniature human hearts grown from stem cells actually develop faster and in greater numbers aboard the International Space Station than they do in Earth-based laboratories. This stands in sharp contrast to what low gravity does to fully formed hearts, which shrink, weaken, and lose their ability to pump effectively without gravity's resistance. Researchers believe the low-gravity environment may actually support the production process for small heart tissue clusters grown from scratch, an insight that could have significant implications for both transplant medicine and our understanding of human biology beyond Earth's atmosphere. Thanks for listening to the Troubled Minds Radio Network.
Indeed. Thanks for hanging out. Fantastic call so far. Appreciate it very much. There's a ton of stuff in play here, like I said, and I wanted to do that codex because we talked about the codex on the last show in terms of the goblins. Like I said, thank you for all the people who are finding us on YouTube from the Goblin Show. There's a ton of like I don't know, times 5 the amount of views we typically get right now, 24 hours or 48 hours later. It's wild. So thank you for finding us and thank you for caring about the ideas and hanging out and listening. But look, the codex ran into this other idea of the Grimoire tradition. I think it's important to recognize what's happening to us and around us and through us, and as usual, confront our own mythologies and what it means to be human. That's why I do this. That's why I talk about these ideas. Not to be blasphemous. Honestly, I don't see the world that way. I see the world as competing ideas. And so let's talk about them very simply. You guys are the best. Thanks for the call, Jen and Joe and James. What's up, Eric, Joe in Florida, Moth? I see you there, buddy. Hey, keep sharing the stuff. Like I said, I appreciate it very much. I will dig through it with a fine tooth comb. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet. Thank you for sharing. What's up, Daryl, the Robert, Lunging Mule? I was about to say Lounging Mule. APOC and Jen. Thank you for the call, Jen. Fire as always. Who do we got? Hello is not available. Gordo. We got Theo over on Rumble. Carl. How you doing? Merlin Magi, Sweets. Yeah, I hope your Sweets finally got an MRI ordered. My goodness, 3 months. Yeah, right. Modern medicine. Don't get me started on healthcare. Over to YouTube. I hope everybody's well tonight. Thanks for hanging out. Fred got first over there. The Unseen Steve McQueen, Dagger Spells, NY Debs. I see you guys. Thanks for being cool and chill. Jay Winch, what's up, buddy? James is there. You guys are the best. Thanks for, like I said, caring about the ideas enough to, let's say, suspend our disbelief for a moment and also think about ideas outside of the space of modern culture. Also, shout out Kelly is sharing some old grimoires in the Discord. If you have not joined, please do that. troubledminds.org. Click the Discord link. Here we go. Troubled Minds happening now. Welcome back to Troubled Minds. I'm your host, Michael Strange. We're streaming on YouTube, Rumble, X, Twitch, and Kick. We are broadcasting live on the Troubled Minds Radio Network. That's KUAP Digital Broadcasting out of Las Vegas, Nevada. Yeah, you bet your bippy. The entertainment capital of the world. Tonight, we're talking the Grimoire tradition. Now, look, it's weird to me because if you look at the old spells and sort of the information that came out of these ancient grimoires, it's one thing. The other thing is to open this book and be changed forever, okay? To actually change not just an ideology, but change the fact that you would lose your entire family. You would go to war. You would whatever. I mean, these are books that have been, I don't know, in our mind space forever. And very smartly, Jen pointed out the most obvious one, the one that probably has had the most influence in the past at least 1,000 or 1,500 years on Western society and, of course, the world over. So I don't know. Like I said, I'm not here to pick on religions or be blasphemous or be stupid, intentionally obtuse. That's not the point. The point is to look at our own mythologies in the mirror and consider what we know or what we don't know about them and about ourselves. That's it. It's very simple. It's a confusing sort of a child's mind space of how come there's so many different versions of the same thing, right? Like something I would ask when I was 10, except now I'm old and I can ask these questions a little more eloquently and talk about them with very smart people. Thank you for the calls. You guys are incredible. Appreciate it very much. 702-857-6939. James, anything to add? And then we got some callers we'll go to. And thanks for being patient, my man.
No problem. Great calls from everyone. And just you mentioned mythology there, just making me think of that, and books that were sort of included in one version of a recommended sort of set of reading and or belief system, and not another, but just mythology as well. People around the world have had ideas about how things started in this world, and the creation myths and all that. And to a lot of these peoples, these are not just myths. These are the ways that things may have actually happened, or at least there's some element in them that they believe this is some kind of a way of how things started and how things were led to where we are now. And then, but then, if you try to go against that and say none of that can be real, obviously you're going to end up people are not going to be happy with that, and that goes all around the world. And yet, like you said too, so many mythologies around the world include similar things in parts of the world that have no contact with each other, as far as we know. So that's always fascinated me as well, and I wonder if that's sort of similar to what we're talking about here.
Yeah, well said, all that. And it is, like I said, please don't be offended. We're not here to do that. We're here to look at the idea, like I said, from the child's mind space of let's talk about these ideas now that we can, and even challenge some traditions. I think some traditions are very good. Some traditions are very bad, meaning we shouldn't be killing each other the world over still in 2026. I've said that a lot. I will not change my mind on that. I'm sorry. And that's that. Love to hear your thoughts. We got a bunch of calls on the line. Thanks for being patient, friends. 702-857-6939. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. Let me make sure. Let's see, because some of these get doubled up. Okay, yeah, let's go. I'm not sure who this is. You are on Troubled Minds. What is your first name? Where are you calling from? And welcome. Go right ahead. Test.
What's up? This is Theo from Philadelphia.
Theo in Philly, the official poet of Troubled Minds. Thanks for being patient, my man. You are on. What you got for us tonight? Go right ahead.
Yeah, so I think this is a great topic. Great callers all beforehand. Joe from Florida, James, Jen, great always. I would say that we have to define what a grimoire actually is. I would define a grimoire as a series of written words which slowly invades your mind and evokes a feeling that the author wants you to feel. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Sort of outside of the idea of a stanza or a poem or whatever, a parable, there's a larger sort of basis for how you're supposed to react by engaging with the book, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, my basic argument, and I've made this argument a lot before, and I will continue to make this argument until I fucking die. Sorry, I shouldn't curse. But all prose, all novels, all forms of narrative are basically just grimoires that are subtle attempts at mind control. And the real difference between narrative fiction, somebody who is attempting to implant their own narrative into your own mind, and something cool like poetry, is that poetry is a series of words that don't necessarily need to make sense, and they allow the reader to come to their own conclusion. But, a narrative, man, just reading a story, goddamn, that's just harsh. Just somebody trying to force you down their own path, the own things that they thought. Isn't that gross and kind of almost like slavery and mind control?
Well, I feel what you're saying, but I mean, I can see both sides of this, and I'll play angel's advocate, and we'll talk about it in that way. Okay. Because let's say we just,
please do.
We see life differently, you and I. Okay. We probably agree on a ton of things, probably 85% of the things we talk about, we probably agree on. Okay. However, there's going to be a meandering in my life or a path in your life or whatever that diverge. Okay. And you feel very passionately about, and so do I. And then so us sharing those stories that might seem like propaganda, the narrative of where we are, where we're headed, where we came from. It might seem like a propaganda aspect of mind control. I feel you, but also, me and you, we respect each other. Okay. Telling each other those stories that are a little bit divergent, we might learn something from each other and of course about ourselves. So I understand what you're saying entirely. I'm a propaganda guy. I talk about these ideas a ton and I feel you 100%, but also without sharing sort of that lived experience with each other, maybe we don't see the counterpoint of others and ourselves without sharing the direct narrative. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
I think that's fair enough. Although I would say that I've never viewed your words as anything other than poetry, just pure poetry. Yeah, I mean, like you're not like ever attempting to sell a narrative. You're just using your words to open things up, which I think is like the defining difference between narrative and poetry. Like, are you attempting to open things up, or are you attempting to tell your own story?
Yeah, well said.
Like, I think there's something like intrinsically greedy about attempting to tell your own story as opposed to attempting to open things up and just,
I get it.
Other people.
I feel you. I feel
their
you.
own poems.
I feel you 100%. And thank you. That's very kind of you to say that everything I say is poetry, because we all know that's not the entire truth.
It is.
I have a ton of rambling between here and there.
I actually believe.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. What else you got? Grimoires or otherwise?
Nothing else. I just got a quick poem to read if you guys are willing to listen.
Love to hear it.
A little bit of verse.
Love to hear it. Go right ahead.
All right, untitled, but prose written and verse smitten. Every word I drank into my mind, and every thought I agree with. So much sense made, it is almost sublime. And I agree, and so do you. And as a matter of fact, anyone who doesn't agree will be crucified as a shrew. Mind your books and keep your words divine, lest your thoughts be filled with another man's false crimes.
Fire as always. Fire as always. You were the best. I appreciate you. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being kind in the chat. Thanks for understanding that the world isn't as simple as we like to make it. And thanks for being part of it. Always a pleasure, brother.
Toodles.
Have a great night. You know him, you love him. Theo in Philly, the official poet of Troubled Minds, for obvious reasons, because he calls in. Thank you for the contribution. And he reads his poems that he's written. And he writes the poems on the fly before he calls in, obviously based on the show, on the topic, on the ideas that are kind of flowing through. So thank you for that. Fire stuff as always. Appreciate you very much. 702-857-6939. Thank you for, we got some ghost bugs in the machine here. So I'm going to click a couple things. So Matt Sell's next. I'm going to drop that call and go to the bottom here, because I got like 4 Matt Sells. Let's see which one is good. Okay. So hang tight on the phone line. We will get to you guys. Like I said, I got some house cleaning to do here. Where is it? 702-857-6939. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. Matt's out. Matthew in California, you're on Troubled Minds. How are you, sir? Go right ahead.
Hey, Mike. Good show.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it very much. What's on your mind? Tons of stuff here to talk about.
Yeah, I was talking about books and the knowledge, and you were talking about a book, like having all the knowledge in one space, and how that could be a good thing, and that could also be a bad thing. But for me, I've been collecting books ever since I can remember. As a little kid, I would read books and I would collect them. And I collected books, and when I started getting into like esoteric knowledge and things like that, I wanted to learn. I wanted to read as many books as I could. So I went to the library and I rented the books, read them, rented all the esoteric, astrology, any kind of magic, any kind of history books that I could from the library. Went to all the libraries in my town, went to all the libraries in the next town. Then I realized something important. You can actually request a book. If you have your library card, which you should, you can request a book from anywhere in the library. Another branch will send it to you if you request it. So there's really no excuse if I'm like recommending books or anybody's recommending a book, oh, I can't afford it or I can't get it. No, you can go to the library and you can request it, and it might take a couple of weeks to ship it to you from another branch. But you can rent books from other branches. Did you know that?
I didn't actually know that in particular. You could get the physical book. I do know they've opened it up and it's a digital space. I've been reading books on a sort of a digital library. I can't remember the name of the app, but there's an app that does that. And you get like a 2 weeks with the digital book. And then when it's, when the 2 weeks is up, you have to turn it back in, and then you have to you know what I mean? It's sort of like a digital experience of the library. And so, I mean, it seems silly to me that you have to turn it back in and then request the book or whatever. But I mean, this is the world we live in the digital space. It's not like you can't just copy paste the entire damn thing and just spread it around. But anyway, I did not know that, and I love that, and I will add that to the things Michael Strange does. Appreciate the knowledge.
Yeah, and so I started collecting books, and it's an expensive hobby. Started buying the books, started collecting them, because I saw what happened at I read about what happened at the Great Alexandrian Library. And I don't want that to happen again, but trying to put all the knowledge in one space, it's a good thing, it's a bad thing. We know what happened. But talking about just trying to bring all the knowledge in one space, and how I've grown my library to where it is kind of legit, where I feel like it's kind of like a landmark. If you guys need books, I got books. But anyways, I'm reminded of, and I had the whole idea of like creating a library, getting as much knowledge as I could into one space, like collecting it into all the physical copies of books into one space. And under the Temple of the Owl, the owl is the keeper of wisdom, keeper of knowledge. And so I had that idea as a kid, and then I started collecting the books. And it's funny is that later on, I think, I don't want to know the years, 2003, 2004 maybe, a kids cartoon came out called Avatar: The Last Airbender. And it's a kids cartoon, but it's got, it teaches about chakras and auras and the elements. It is a kids cartoon. But in the cartoon, spoiler, in the cartoon is a part where our heroes are looking for a way to destroy the enemy. And they meet up with this guy that's, he's a philosopher. And he's like, yeah, there's a library that has all the knowledge. We can find it there. So they go looking for this library, and they end up finding this library in the middle of the desert. It's under the sand, sunken in the sand. They go down there, and it's this giant, enormous library of, it's like basically the Library of Alexandria. And it ends up being the keeper of the library is a giant owl, and his name is Washington, the knower of 1,000 things. And he keeps all his knowledge in one spot. And he's like, well, humans are no longer allowed in the library because a human had came, the bad guy had came, found the knowledge he wanted to destroy his enemies, and then burned that wing of the library down, which is a no-no. We don't do that. And so humans are no longer allowed in the library. And that's why he sank it into the sand. And so our heroes are like, well, we'll offer you knowledge. So they offer him, they bring him things, donate to the library. So they're able to go in. They go into the library. And of course they find what they're looking for, which is a way to defeat their enemy. And the owl spirit is like, I knew it. I knew you guys were here just to, exploit things. Going back in history, looking at it, if humans have a way to exploit anything, they're going to do it. It's like common knowledge, right? It's just a thing that happens. So he banishes them from the library, and he takes the whole library away. But one of the philosopher that was with them, he's like, I want to stay here forever. This is my home. I want to stay here. So he gets a bunch of books, and he kind of sits in the corner, and he's reading the stack of books. And then in the future, 10 years later, another series comes out, and The Legends of Korra, which is the next Avatar. And in that cartoon, they revisit that space. The library is now in the spirit world. And of course, they pass by that corner of the library. There's a skeleton with the same clothes as the philosopher sitting there reading those. He died reading books. he stayed there forever.
Yeah, I mean, hey, look, aren't there worse ways to go than just having like the entirety of like a human knowledge at your fingertips and just like delving into it forever, and then you pass off peacefully because you know all the things you wanted to know. I mean, I love that.
Yeah, and so that's what kind of made me think of the idea of we have the Alexandrian Library and what happened, and we'll talk about that, the history and all those kind of things. But it makes me think that if there is some sort of, knowledge, all the knowledge in one spot, maybe it's not here. Maybe it is in the spirit realm. And maybe that is what the Akashic records are. All the knowledge in one spot. Just, you have to know how to gain access to it. And humans aren't allowed because we are the way we are. If you catch what I'm saying there. Humans are going to exploit things. It's just the way we are.
Amen.
If there's a way to exploit things, we're going to do it. And so it brings me back to the Alexandrian Library, and thinking about the Alexandrian Library and what it was. I imagine they said it was a city of books, a library. So like imagine like a city like Las Vegas. Just imagine Las Vegas. But every building is a library dedicated to one thing. And they said it was a city. So they had all the knowledge, and they went out. They made expeditions to bring back the knowledge, and they brought things from Egypt. They brought things from Greece, from all around the world, back to this one place. And like I said, it's a good thing. I mean, I would have loved it. I would have loved to be a scholar back then, or a teacher in that space, and lived. They just lived in the city, and they just read books and shared knowledge and copied things all day. But what I want to talk about the story of Hypatia. And the story of Hypatia, it's a sad story, but it's a story about this woman that lived in the Great Alexandrian Library. And if you guys want to get into it, it's just the story of Hypatia. She was a scholar, teacher. She was an astronomer. She taught the healing art. She taught all these the mystery schools that we talk about. And there's several times that church that city had burned down, and it wasn't all accidents. There's things like there was wars on ships, and the ships brought the fire to the docks, and that burned down part of the city. There's several times that city had burned down. But Hypatia, the reason why she's important is because when the church came and they wanted to, there was like war between the pagans and the church, and they wanted to take all that away. And she was an innocent bystander that tried to save the knowledge. Unfortunately, it's a sad story. She was murdered, and then they kind of used her as a catalyst to burn all this stuff, and burn the church, burn that library down, and put things on the fire, these pagan scrolls and things like that. And I always ask myself, in that chaos and confusion, what did we lose? And the thing is that they said they try to calculate it, but they end up saying like countless. But the one that trips me out the most is they say that countless papyrus scrolls from Egypt. Like these are like ancient Egypt papyrus scrolls that had been burned, that had not been copied or translated yet. And I wonder, just things like, what if the key to life was on these scrolls and we don't know it because they burned it? Sorry, I'm kind of rambling, but anything on that?
No, you're good. You're good. It's an interesting space, the Library of Alexandria, the beginning of that Ptolemaic dynasty. Like, if you guys aren't familiar with that part of history, go read about that. It's incredible. That's in some capacity they were exchanging knowledge, hoarding knowledge, and ships that came in, they would the books they brought, they would copy the books they brought as sort of a tax, or well, okay, if you're going to use our port, then you're going to share knowledge with us. I mean, this is the internet, right? Except, the internet is, 90% fake. So, I mean, it's so wild that like this place existed. And then as time exists and moves and changes and the big fire and all the things, and there's a ton of conspiracies around that, but it's I don't know, like I've never heard of the individual you're talking about, but it's an incredible story and I absolutely love it. And you were spot on, brother. Appreciate you very much. What else you got?
Yeah, I just think it's interesting. Having all the knowledge in one space can be a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing. We were talking about with like a book that has a book that has it all. I feel like we just need to, kind of go within and bring up that whole the Akashic records. Maybe the Akashic records are the Great Alexandrian Library, just moved to the spirit world so that not everyone can get to it. And look up that story of Petra. And thanks, Mike. Good show.
You're the best. Appreciate the call. So, you know him, you love him. Temple of the Owl, Matt's Owl, Matthew in California. Please follow him. templeoftheowl.com. Check out his stuff. Derek the Night Stalker shared a video of your collection there, your library footage. So very impressive. Appreciate you, brother. Thanks for calling. Have a great night. Tell Lacey we said hi. Looks like he hung up. 702-857-6939. We're going to do this because we've had a caller on the line for a long time now. I'm going to just kind of skip the break. Let's skip the break. I'll fudge it afterward, make it like we took a break. Let's go to whoever's on the phone line, been waiting forever. What's up? You're on Troubled Minds. What's your first name? Where are you calling from? And go right ahead.
Hey, how's it going? Good evening. This is Jay from Arizona.
Jay in Arizona, the official skydiver at Troubled Minds. What's up, brother? What's on your mind? Go ahead.
We're talking about bibliotecas, right? Libraries, books, knowledge. Is that correct? I was kind of trying to catch up. I tuned in a little late to the show, so
yeah. The ancient, I'm calling it the Grimoire tradition, sort of the ancient tomes of old that may or may not be dangerous, depending on, I guess, who you ask.
First of all, just cut me off if you need to, if I ramble on, and you need to take a break, but, I'll try to make it quick I think it's just interesting per se, if you guys study like the dynamics of knowledge, I guess, and how it affects the brain, with reading. I remember I was listening to, I think it was NPR News earlier this week, and, psychology and science, they're just showing how the average adult, all the way down to a child, the brain's deteriorating massively with the lack of literacy and reading now, and due in part to technology. But on top of that, it's even reading too digital. Digital reading doesn't affect the brain the way like an actual book that's in this reality versus like a digital reality. I don't know why, but they show MRI scans and it's interesting. I mean, we think we're intelligent, but the way, I guess, dynamics of the human and how we learn and how we function and how we grow, it's just an interesting concept if you guys ever look into it. And then on top of that, I think one of the other callers said it too. I go to the library often, and it's interesting because, different cultures per se, it could be any culture, but I've said this before. I've studied the syntax of I forgot what it was called, languages, and there's another word for it, but I just can't recall it. But English is not a language. If you look into it, it's just a bunch of nonsense. It's sorry, I'm outside and there's traffic and stuff, but if you look into it, it's like the most watered down language. There's no really power in the words. There's no you'll have to get into it, and I'm not trying to get deep into it, but if you guys look into it, you'll see. And it's interesting because when you go deeper, like if you start learning another language, how the mind unlocks per se with MRI scans, and you'll see the different quadrants of the brain and how, I don't know, it's just interesting per se. Like for instance, linear psychology and nonlinear, it's like we're all taught here linear, like a past, present, and future, but it's not like that. It's cyclical, and it's interesting when you get into it, but it shows how your perspective changes and the way you think and how you problem solve and critical thinking and stuff like that. But even with languages per se, you know, for instance, like Spanish or whatever language you want to go into, the dynamics of it and how it's written is way different than English. And I don't know why they do that in English when they translate things. Of course, they lose, you know, like the meat and potatoes of whatever it is they're writing about. But then also the language dilutes it as well. It's a crazy. I know it sounds crazy, but if you guys really learn another language and you kind of see, like, if you read one book that's printed in, you know, whatever language, and then read another in English, you'll see the differences. It's just weird, and it's weird how your mind absorbs it differently and understands it and interprets it differently.
Yeah, I follow you.
Like you said before, and then I don't know. Go ahead.
Just real quick, it's like a different framework. Like the entire framework is just slightly off because of the vernacular. A great example of that is shout out Dave Lovegrove of Viking Superpowers. Like he's reading those old sagas and recognizing that, hey, look, this has been translated one way, but kind of looking at this with fresh eyes and, you know, the modern times, it's not saying what we think it's saying. And so kind of looking at it in a different way, the stuff is very important because vernacular means something, and a slight reframe can change everything. And you're spot on with that. And you speak Spanish, right? Am I right on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, you know, like 100%, but I can get by. Like I said, I mean, I survived some craziness in Mexico, so I'm pretty sure, you know, I can blend in. But the thing is, too, like I said, like even at the libraries, it's interesting. Like I forgot what section I was in the other day, but I was like in Japanese or the Chinese area, and how they write is they write from top to bottom. And then there's other books that go from left to right, and you see how it affects your brain. But it's interesting too, because this gets deeper. And I know from personal experience, I told you I had a skydive accident like 2 years ago, and I had to become left-handed, left foot. I kind of fractured my right side, and I'm right brain. And the right side of the body is connected to the left hemisphere of the brain, and then the left hemisphere is connected to the right. And it's weird when you look at our culture, America, everything's right-handed. Your car, the way you do things. And then I had to adapt for 6 months while I was recovering from this incident. And again, like my mind unlocked something. I got more in. If you study the psychology and science of it, with the stimulation of the brain, a lot of us only have stimulation on the left side, not the right side. And it's weird because I'm not saying it's true, but what I believe is like kind of like the Bible says, equally yoked, where we're not using our mind per se equally. We're all just right hand based, and the right or the left, like I said, it's crisscross, but you have to look into it. Like the physical part of the right is to the left of the brain, and then the physical part of the left is to the right of the brain. And one side is analytical and business, and it goes deeper into math and stuff like that. And then the opposite side is creativity and intuition and spirituality, whatever you want to call it. It has more dynamics of it. And that's kind of what happened to me. It was weird because I was always into finance my whole life. I was always working in that area. And then after my incident, it's like I have no desire. Like I haven't been working in that field anymore. I've been trying to get into art more. I don't know why, but I think it's based on my accident, just more the creative thing that got stimulated. And maybe it was a gift and a curse in a way, what happened. But, and then it's interesting too, because our world, our culture, there is no art. There is no jobs for art. Like unless you're, in Hollywood or something, of course. But other than that, like in the normal sector of life, everything's pretty much just like office jobs or whatever. But it's interesting, like I said, when you guys really get into the mechanics of a human and you study yourself and you study the mind and how we learn, and it's like a manual, like a truck or a car. Like you got the oil, you got the gas, you got the brake, you got all these things, these components, but you know how it all functions. And unfortunately with us, I think we don't even know how we function, and we go to someone else with knowledge when they were all, like I say, brainwashed to think right-based, right-handed, right linear thinking, all this stuff, when it's it's not correct. And that's why we have troubled minds, you know, because we know, I think we all know there is something up. And I think that's part of life or whatever, is just not being equally yoked. But like I said before, it gets deep. I read a lot, and I read in other languages too. And it's just interesting to me, like when you see the world and the more you absorb through literature, and just kind of like how much of a matrix we're in, where everything is just different. And then when you go into other cultures, again, I've kind of researched this, but it's the Oriental and Occidental, the psychology, if you ever study that. And like in Mexico, everything's taught differently, the way they do things differently, the culture, the way business operates, everything. It's interesting. And then you cross the border back here and you see how we do things. And like I said, I've lived over there too, part-time back in the day, and how mentally I adjusted to the psychology and the dynamics of learning how they did things. And I don't know, like I said, I recommend that to anybody, is get out there, you know, get out of like the tech world and actually go do the footwork and go live in a different reality. And you'll kind of see like just things aren't what they seem, you know. And then of course other cultures, like you guys talk about some craziness, and I'm not sure to talk about it, but I dated a Peruvian a while back, and the Quechua people up in the Andes, and they possess a lot of mystical, or whatever you want. I call it spiritual, but they have a lot of abilities. And I experienced that with my ex one time, where like some type of, I don't know what you call it. I just call it like mental awareness, but like telekinesis, telepathic. It was weird because I could kind of pick up on her thoughts when I was around her, and understand what she was thinking without ever having that ability before meeting her, you know. And like I said before, this is just my experience. I don't expect you guys to believe this, but when you guys get out there and you meet like real people from other cultures, not Americanized immigrants, but more people that were born in that region, it's interesting. Like I said, and I think what it is too is the psychology. It unlocks a certain part of their mind. Maybe they're able to access those dynamics of the brain, whether it's like mental telepathy or whatever, versus our psychology. It's kind of limited. You know, we don't have a lot of, I don't know, and maybe they want us to think that way to be in prison, I guess. But anyways, I'll cut it off there. And like I said, just thanks for, you know, doing what you do, and, you know, helping us out with all of the troubled minds out there in the world.
Appreciate it, brother. Before you go, you got traffic in the background. You're outside. Can you, if you don't know this in Spanish, that's fine. But can you say "drive fast, speed turns me on" in Spanish?
I'll pass on that one.
Okay, all right. It's an old.
No,
it's an old DJ Jesse Jeff.
All right,
you're the best, brother.
Take care, and thank you again.
Appreciate the call. I heard the cars in the back going vroom, and I was like, we gotta get the Spanish speaker saying some sexy stuff. You guys are the best. Thanks for hanging out. That's Jay in Arizona, the official skydiver of Troubled Minds. And look, recognize what all the things he was saying. There's a wide arc there of where he started, where he came from, the way his mind changed when his body broke, right? Like the left side, the right side of the brain, and how he sees things differently now, and how he's even pursuing different ideas from his strengths, his previous strengths. It's wild to consider all these things. And I appreciate the call. You're the best. Thanks for being patient on the phone lines, everybody. Thanks for caring about the ideas, and thanks for chipping in. We're talking tonight. Look, this is weird because I'm calling this the Grimoire tradition. What opens when you read it? And is it possible to read a book that's so deeply ingrained in the fabric of reality that it changes you entirely and forever? And we've talked about this a lot in the past in different ways, of course. And there's the obvious, but then there's also the sort of the unseen. Amun Ra. Ra is the seen, the brilliant sun. Amun is the unseen, which fits heavily into these conversations. So what do you know about this? Love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for being patient, friends. And let's go. 702-857-6939. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. Derek in Massachusetts, the Night Stalker. What's up, my man? You're on Troubled Minds. How are you? Just chilling, doing stuff and hanging out. And I didn't expect this one to be a hot topic, but apparently it's a hot topic. What do you got for us today?
Yeah, people like words, I guess. But cut out James, but words are hard. 1 second, I'm just getting in my car. Awesome show.
Words are hard.
Great calls, everybody. Yeah, words are hard. Banger calls from everybody. Sorry, I've been scrambling, so I couldn't text great call and everything, but just great calls from everybody. I just want to piggyback on Theo and Jay's calls real quick, just because while it's fresh. To the language point and have it being like changing your perception and changing the way your mind works. It made me think of the movie Arrival with like the alien invasion one with the octopod things. There's septipod things. They're teaching all the different linguists language in order to communicate with them. And then once Amy Adams, spoiler alert for the movie, when she learns the language, she realizes that they're not writing within linear time. They're not experiencing linear time. So once she processes how to learn that language and becomes fluent in that language, and she herself no longer processes time linearly, and she sees her whole life in, like instantly. So she knows everything that's going to happen. It's a mind alterer. And to Theo's point, when he was talking about how the words put images in your head and stuff, and how like every piece of writing and stuff is a different form of grimoire, it made me think of words as psychedelics, like words kind of being the original psychedelic, the original mind alterer, the original consciousness shifter. And that ties right back into Jay's thing with the idea that the language literally rewires your brain. And I'm envious of anybody who speaks more than one language. I'm really grappling with English and stuff. I started at Rivers, but she speaks like 6 or 7 languages, and it's unbelievably impressive to me. It's what's like one of the things I wish I had the most. I'm very envious of that. But me off from rambling, but I got a ton of thoughts here.
No, you're right. And remember, there's like that super learning phase of children where you can learn like 10 languages in like 5 years or whatever. And then once you hit like that cutoff, you're like 12 years old, forget it. Like you got to learn it the hard way. It's so crazy. Like just how malleable the human brain is, not just early on, but then how it changes. And even look, we're not that far away age wise, maybe 10, 12, 15 years. But yeah, you know what I mean? Like kind of in the same space, but still we're different enough where my mind is changed or your mind is changed or not changed or whatever. It's weird. And how do you quantify that? And how does it really become something? I don't know. Like, I don't want to be like, oh, Mike's old, so he thinks like an old person. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so strange to me that this is the way that society has really become. And again, you know me, and I hate the fact that we always end up having one generation pitted against the other. Like it's like the boomers are so stupid and they run the world poorly, and I can't stand that stuff. Because obviously,
that's true. No, I'm just kidding.
No, that's totally true. No, I mean, but you know what I mean. Like, it's like, okay, so
no, for sure.
Like, I'll just make the quick case and I'll shut up. Is that okay? You prove to me that your generation is immune to corruption entirely, and then I'll believe you. But if you can't speak for your entire generation in that capacity, then stop that crap. Would you please just respect our elders for what they do know, and not for what the leaders of their generation, the stupid things they've done? I mean, anyway, sorry, I digress. You know me, it triggers me entirely, and that's why I bring it up. But go ahead, sir.
No, you're exactly right. To that point, like the words have power aspect of it. I never really considered. I mean, I think about generations a lot. I think about how different generations. Like, I think about like micro generations. Like, how old were you when you were? I think I talked about this with my nerd groups. Like, when you were 11, watching like there's like 2-year, 3-year little Disney Channel micro age. Like, who's your star of Disney Channel when you watched it during that little 3 or 4 year gap and stuff. And there's a little mini generations and stuff. So I'm all about context. But just the idea of words having power. I didn't think about boomers being like running the society into the ground necessarily. I mean, I believe the elites are doing that, but just the term, the meme of, okay, boomer, just that's had so much power. Just having that become a meme all of a sudden, just it makes people just think about boomers, like even just like without even trying to in that way. Like, they have to, like, whether they believe it or not. I mean, you can be a boomer and probably still like, what are they saying? I think like they're saying we're dumb, and that has like some kind of lingering effect, which I'll get to in a second. There's one thing I want to read that's pretty cool. I don't want to get to, but just real quick to the idea of the spells part, because that's not really what we're talking about exactly. But just the idea of that these grimoires and stuff are like kind of like writing, bottle something down. Like, there's the idea that language potentially and speaking the spoken word is one potential an metaphor, analogy, or what the fall, the biblical fall, is talking about. That there was a time when we were telepathic, and when we started speaking, that's kind of the Tower of Babel idea. And then the process of saying words out loud and making these symbols, like something we have to say, brought us down a level, and that's kind of a fall, like a fall. And now we have to like communicate using these words and stuff, where we could just communicate instantly or by mind before. And I think writing is kind of the next step to that. And if you watch Stargate, when the people, like the movie Stargate, when James Spader like is trying to communicate with the people over there, he starts like writing stuff. He starts drawing the different symbols in the sand. They're like, no, they start freaking out. No, you can't do that. You can't do that. And so and you see that with a lot of different indigenous culture stuff. That the idea that to write something like captures the essence of it and puts it down, and like it bottles this thing. It bottles the flame of it, or it bottles something. It bottles the symbol. So speaking it brings it down. Writing it really brings it down and potentially like locks it up a little bit. And like there's a Buffy episode from the first season, which was pretty cool. And it's more about like AI kind of, but the whole crux of it is they have a whole library, and Buffy's mentor person is a real stodgy British guy who's a librarian. And it's all about books and the tangibility of books and how they smell, and the smell being associated with memory and stuff. And is everything digital? So it's more ephemeral and it's fleeting and stuff. But he wanted to scan. He wanted to put like get a database together of all his texts and stuff to make it easier to research. So they started a process where they're scanning the books onto the internet, and the whole story is that there was a demon that was locked away in this book, and it was in the process of scanning it released the demon Moloch onto the internet so we can run wild. And it was kind of a mid-90s like AI on the internet story kind of, but it also fits this metaphor of like the book is the bottle kind of, and the words are the fire or the magic kind of, the mind alterer or just the essence, this specialness, the spirit. And then the kind of the Grimoire captures it, and the idea of putting a demon literally into that book is like a literal metaphor of that. But the Necronomicon is kind of the same thing. It's a conduit to something like powerful. So kind of the words and the symbols kind of pull the something powerful out of the ether for a time. And when you say it, it's still fleeting. But when you write it, it becomes much more permanent. And then when somebody can read it, it opens that up again, and you can get burned by that flame, or like the writing it is like putting the genie into the bottle, and then or into the lamp, and then the reading is the rubbing of the lamp, kind of. Sorry, I'm rambling real bad. It's a busy night, but
no, you're good. No, you're good. Real quick on that. So the fascinating part about that to me is, so not only so you speak it, right, and it's sort of ephemeral. Yeah. Like the people that hear it can pass it on through the oral tradition, and that is literally goes back thousands and thousands of years. But as we know, the telephone game, the stories get changed. They become sort of, they morph into whatever's contemporary. However, when you write things down like you're describing, it is quite a bit more sacred in the sense that it could live forever. And then go back further, and when you write it in stone, these things do live forever. And so suddenly, right, we as usual, look, we start the conversation one way, but then it kind of meanders and goes this way and that way and the other. But this is the crux of what we've been talking about all night. It is that Grimoire tradition of not just passing information, but passing dangerous information, or dangerous information to the powers that be, because clearly those are the ones that want to suppress this stuff. Look, I want to know all about the stuff that was written in stone. All the world over, I want to know all about it. Like, what the hell did they know before they had tablets and computers and all of this and podcasts and all the things? What were they telling as a campfire story? I want to know all about it. Though it's weird, it doesn't get published like it should. I mean, maybe I'm not digging deep enough. I don't know. Like, these are the types of things you have to really go look for. But you see what I'm saying? You write it in stone, and the sacred becomes like a super sacred. It becomes something that could be eternal. And
exactly.
Go ahead.
No, it gains immortality, and it gains a kind of like time travel nature to it, where to say it, you pull something out of the like Elysium or out of the underworld, you pull a power out, but then to write it down and to have somebody read it, then you're pulling that power down and then kind of reversing it all throughout the time-space continuum, because it can last forever kind of. And that's kind of the Call of Cthulhu and the Necronomicon type of stuff. It's that that these entities can use that intentionally, because they want to have a conduit, some kind of connecting thing that tethers them in some capacity to this realm. So then when people read it or evoke it in some capacity, then they're touching that power. So I think that's kind of the danger of it, or kind of the Pandora's box like aspect of it. In Lovecraft Country, the HBO show that came out in like 2019 range, they don't have the Necronomicon per se, but they have something called the Book of Names, and like there's like a secret, it's like a Golden Dawn kind of like facsimile, where this like the cult leaders hunting down this Book of Names because it has this ancient wizard's all of like his greatest spells, and basically like he attached the steering wheel to all of reality, like basically the codes to the pillars of reality, and by accessing it, and in order for it to last forever, to gain immortality, you bind it into a book. Just you write it down. It's a book of names. It's a book of words that you say, and it has these power. And then once you open it, once you start reading it, then these things have dominion in here again. You know, it's the same. It's like attention. It's like the first commandment and stuff. And these things are a way for kind of these shadows to have light cast on them all the time. If I can, in the classic meme is like, or the classic Buffy meme is, don't speak Latin in front of the books, Xander, and stuff, because it's like, even if you don't know what you're saying, they can still summon a demon or something like that, just because that's what they are. You know, they're like they're cheat codes, they're code words. And even if you don't, like your little brother playing video games and hitting a bunch of buttons, and he accidentally presses a cheat code in there, you know, he didn't mean to conjure up that fatality in Mortal Kombat, but that's what happened. You know. Got it one more time, but I got one thing to read from Alan Moore about writing that I think is pretty cool. I think it might be worth it.
Yeah, you're good. No, you're good. You're good. Just talking the Grimoire tradition here. And like I said, it's not about specifically like a parable directly or a spell written down. You know, these are one-offs. But when you collect a massive version of all these things and put them into one space, one book, one Grimoire, as we're describing tonight, suddenly it becomes something else, like the greater than the sum of its parts, as we always say about this show, which is absolutely true, because all of you guys are incredible. But when we all come together, it's incredible plus. But in that particular space, it's not necessarily always the deal. And Jen, shout out Jen in the chat. She just said that, like, you know, the written in stone stuff is government. It's control. It's all the things we're always sort of talking about and raging against in one way or another. So, and I feel that. I totally feel that. But also, there's going to be a ton of wisdom there that's pre sort of the knowledge space of the modern realm, of the modern world, of modern science and that scientific aspect. Yeah. There's a ton there. Like I said, it's incredible to see it both ways and all ways, and to talk about it and think about it with incredibly smart friends. What else you got? Go ahead.
I just, no, exactly. Yeah, I forgot this book, the Book of Names thing. It reminds me of they're just basically just the Book of Dead Names. In the show canon is essentially the Necronomicon. That's like the evil spells, and there's the Book of Names, which is the pillars of reality spells. Like one is the one that kind of calls Cthulhu, and the other one is kind of you can open up the gates of everything. That is the deal. But the Book of Names reminds me of like the most modern kind of banned words we have. It's the list of names. It's the Epstein list. It's another bunch of words that have a bunch of weird power that can shake reality to its core. If people read it. It's a completely different context, but it's I don't know. It's a weird codex of names that can really make reality when read by the masses. That's a trippy concept to think about. I think this is less about books, more about just writing in general. I think we might have talked about it before, but there's a video from Alan Moore about writing. He talks about writing and magic, and he talks about basically writing is one of the most powerful magics, and people were essentially more afraid of the writer, of the storyteller, of the bard, than the alchemist. You know, I'll read the quote. But the early stages of writing describe gods like Thoth and Hermes were also the gods of magic. I don't believe that is entirely coincidence. In my estimation, writing and magic are practically the same thing. And then he says, now I understand it. Now, as I understand it, the bards were feared. They were respected. But more than that, they were feared. If you were just a magician, if you pissed off some witch, then what you're going to do? She's going to put a curse on you. What's going to happen? Your hens are going to lay funny. Your milk's going to go sour. Maybe one of your kids is going to get a hair lip or something like that. No big deal. You piss off a bard, forgetting about putting a curse on you, he might put a satire on you. And if it was a skillful bard, he puts a satire on you that destroys you in the eyes of your community. It shows you up as ridiculous, lame, pathetic, worthless in the eyes of your community, in the eyes of your family, in the eyes of your children, in the eyes of yourself. And if it's a particularly good bard and it's written in a particularly good satire, then 300 years after you're dead, people are still going to be laughing at what a twat you were. And I was like, that's a really trippy idea.
It's true. It's true, though. It is incredibly true. Like I've said, don't F with the bard, because the bard has ways of not just dooming you and your current and future prospects, but dooming you and the future prospects of your entire familial line. Like it is true. It is true. And look, I talk about this a lot, and it is very core to that idea of human resonant energy, right? That satire that lives forever is, maybe even about the lords and the ladies of the kingdom or whatever. People are whispering and snickering about it. Even though it's not spoken openly, it still exists and lives on and will doom you and your, right to rule or your ability to rule or whatever, just to be an actual competent member of society, accepted member. Yeah. It's not. Yeah, I agree 100%. And I've got some personal examples, which I will not discuss, but one day, if the moment comes, I am the bard. I promise you that. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
There's one example that comes to my mind is in a conspiracy world, we talk about George H.W. Bush as this supervillain, essentially, kind of behind the scenes. He's connected to all the three-letter agencies and stuff. He's a real power player in the 80s and everything. He's tied to potentially the Kennedy stuff. He's tied to so much stuff between the 60s to 90s. Like, he's just in the mix completely. He's running the show, it seems like. But he only was president for one term. And to me, that's because of Dana Carvey's Saturday Night Live impression. And it took this person who was especially in the 80s and stuff. I mean, whoever they roll out there, like they don't know anything. Like Dan Quayle, who the hell knows? Like they can just they vote for whoever's out there. There's no internet. But the not going to do it, wouldn't be prudent, not going to be able to do it. Like that changed the whole perception of H.W. Bush forever. And it made him. And there's a classic sketch of that he apparently really didn't like that much. Dana Carvey doing it. Please don't make me a one-termer, God. Don't make me a one-termer and stuff. So just this unbelievably powerful thing was taken down by a satire, and obviously still probably steering their reels behind the scenes, but just couldn't be in the power position because this one satire took down one of the most powerful men of the era and stuff. And it didn't take down George W. Bush, but in the same way, like Will Ferrell doing the strategery and doing his impression of it, George W. Bush, no matter what he did, he's going to be known as that dumb Will Ferrell impression forever. That's like Will Ferrell might be in the history books with them in the second paragraph. A good satire is like a curse. Maybe, I don't know. I'm rambling. I'll take off. The show's over. But banger, brother.
Banger call. You're the best. Appreciate you very much. You love him. Derek in Massachusetts, the Night Stalker. Spot on. Hey, don't F with the bard, because the bard has a way of damning you and cursing you for generations. And don't forget Sarah Palin. I can see Russia from my house, right? All the stuff, like these people have become the parodies and the satire of the time. James, thanks for being patient. What you got? Let's wrap this up.
Oh, a couple of things. I put in the YouTube chat there because that's the only place I'm looking right now. Is I've seen in different writers groups I've been part of where there's like people make memes that have the saying, don't piss me off or I'll put you in my novel as a character. And then, the unspoken part is, and then I'll kill that character off in the novel, so it's definitely a thing. Also, funny thing here, when it comes to talking about the words and everything, it's amazing how pictures also, if you look at pictures around the world and even photography, there are people around the world that do not like to have their picture taken because they feel like that picture may take part of who they are and capture it in the picture. So you have these similar things, pictures and words, that both seem to be powerful, and images. And I mean, just thinking about grimoires and all that, how often in fiction do you see or read about these grimoires also having images in them? And again, going back to the symbols. So all these things. The other thing I think is fascinating is the last thing is just translation and interpretation. How many different ways can the same piece of material be viewed and be taken and be used, and how many different viewpoints can come from the same material. I think it's really fascinating. But that was all I had. Thank you for having me on, as always.
You're the best. Thanks for being patient. And welcome to Troubled Minds. Looking at the world in a ton of different ways. Look, you can say one thing. You can begin a conversation with one sentence, with one question, with one idea. And look what happens. It's good. It's okay. It's okay to off-branch. It's okay to meander. It's okay to riff and think as you go. Because sometimes if you don't get asked a question, what are you doing? Right? You never thought to think of it. It's not something that's ever sort of crossed your mental space. And that's what this is about. This is not about truth, as I always say. If you're here for truth, you're in the wrong place. I don't have truth. I wish I did. I barely manage my own, okay? Personally. But also, in the societal space, truth is beyond a slippery fish. It's how much lube did P. Diddy have? And it's a slippery fish with that much lube on it. There you go. Michael Strange getting crude here. Drive fast, speed turns me on. Look, and I don't know the answers, and that's the point. So think about how liberating it is to be able to talk about ideas without having to come to a conclusion. That's literally what this has always been about. It's what it will always be about, because I'm not trying to make you a Christian. I'm not trying to make you a Muslim. I'm not trying to make you anything, or vice versa, or make you not believe. I don't care. I think whatever you believe is magnificent. As long as there's reflection, as long as you can talk to each other and not hate each other as part of it. Okay? That's it. So let's do it. Let's talk about these ideas. Let's consider what's wrong and what's right and what's different and what's in between. And look at history. I think there's a lot to be learned from history, and you can basically chop your slice of, this 50 years or that 75 years and find eternal knowledge in the same cycles we always repeat. That's it. I don't know. It's wild to me that here we are in 2026 repeating all the damn same cycles that have been repeated forever. And we just keep doing it. It's absolutely wild. If you want to help Troubled Minds, help our friends. TroubledMinds.org/friends. Scroll down to the click on friends or /friends, TroubledMinds.org/friends. Scroll down. So many people there that have helped throughout the years. Please help them. Go follow them in all the places. 95% of that's free. As I always say, it's true. Follow their YouTube channels. Follow them on X or wherever you find them. There are some people selling some books and some other things. Let's support them too. Shout out James, Herschel, Matthew in Colorado. Like, there's some people selling books down there too. Go buy their books. Let's help the fam. That's what this is about. Okay. And then if you want to help us directly, just let people know a conversation is happening. But we're not going to tell you who to vote for. Spread the word. Just say, hey, come listen. This is not what you think it is. Again, personally, I'm not trying to be blasphemous. I'm trying to look at our mythology in the mirror in the modern day and consider what we know, what we don't know, and what comes next. That's it. It's very simple. But also it's very complicated, because when there's no conclusion, well, it means you just do the next one. Speaking of the next one, God willing, we'll see you on Tuesday night. This one goes out to each and every one of you. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for being part of this. Be sure, be strong, be true. Thank you for listening. From our troubled minds to yours, have a great night.